Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. A good topic for you today? Let's do it. People who have claimed to see a UFO. What was your experience like? Please remember to like, share, listen, and ask for shoutouts, hype, and subscribe. Have a great day. Summer before 8th grade, me and two of my friends snuck out at midnight to go walk around the neighborhood and go see these girls on the next block who were having a sleepover. We turn a corner in our neighborhood, and there's this huge black blimp-shaped thing in the sky. Like the pictures of the Hindenburg, but bigger than that and as close if not closer. Completely silent, and the size of at least 4 to 5 football fields across. No exaggeration. Even though I was young, we stare at it entranced, asking each other over and over again if we see it, which we all agree that we do. Standing there, frozen in one place. It's like black polished gunmetal. No lights, no sound, no anything. It's just hovering there. And then I don't know what happened, but time clearly jumps. Next thing I remember is the craft ship government experiment, whatever the hell it has, gone, and there's a tiny glowing white barbell thing in the sky, seemingly slowly falling to earth with wisps of smoke coming off it. Then 2 brand new black trucks with silver gearboxes on the back, like F-150s or S-10s, but nicer, came speeding down the street, going about 70 in a residential 25-mile-per-hour neighborhood. Then after that, I remember walking home to one of my friends' houses and going to bed. At that point it was like 5 or 6 a.m., and the sun was coming up. We all made a promise to tell my dad in the morning because he worked for the city, but we never did. I don't know what happened later in life to one of my friends who was there, but the other was my best friend, and we sort of made an unspoken pact never to talk about it. Don't know how or why we did that. We all grew up, and I sort of lost touch with him too. We did reconnect over Facebook and such over the years, but it was like there was something between us neither of us wanted to touch or talk about. Looking back on it now, there's no way we could have been the only ones to see it. It wasn't that late at night, and it was over a heavily populated suburb of a major city. The idea of this has always scared me more than any sort of possible abduction scenario. That there were others, and we're all voluntarily suffering a sort of collective amnesia, except in how we're not. I've thought about hypnosis, but that scares me too, plus I'm not sure if I'd trust the results. I was just a kid then, and I'm not sure if I could trust the hypnotist. What I do know, again, is that there's no way it was just the 3 of us who saw it. We're talking a huge thing hovering in the sky directly above hundreds of houses just after midnight on a summer weekend night. But nothing on the news, nothing in the paper, nothing on TV, no words spoken about it again ever by anyone. This is a true story. I'm a little older than the average around here, I think. But I know what creepypasta and stuff like that is. This happened, and there's no way I'm the only one who remembers. No way. My mom tells a story of her and her friend. Let's call her friend Lisa. When my mom and Lisa were teenagers, they were up on the roof of Lisa's house, and they see a bright light in the sky. Next thing they know, the light is gone. Thing is, they think they've been on the roof for like 15 minutes, but something like 3 hours passed. Mom doesn't remember anything about what happened during that time, and Lisa simply refuses to talk about it. She would answer my mom with things like, I don't know, and just drop it for a long time. So a couple of months later, Mom moves away and loses contact with Lisa for about 10 years. She finally meets up with her again, and immediately notices that something is odd about Lisa. Lisa appeared very distant to her with a very dreamy demeanor, like she was really happy and at peace for no good reason. After they talk for a bit, Lisa brings up the incident on the roof. Mom says she still doesn't really remember anything about it. But Lisa remembers. She remembers everything. She said that at first it was all in bits and pieces, and she couldn't remember any of it clearly. She was confused and scared and wanted to avoid discussing it. Then as time passed, she began to remember more of it. She remembers it all clearly, and she remembers the other 3 times she was abducted, and that clearly as well. At first they paralyzed her somehow and did all sorts of invasive experiments on her. But by the most recent time they stopped probing her and began to talk with her. They didn't speak English or any other human language, but she could understand everything they said, even though she can't speak their language herself. Apparently, they told her all sorts of things, stuff about space, Earth itself, and most shockingly predicted years beforehand that she would get pregnant in a specific year, and it would also be a stillborn, and that she would never be able to have children again. They also told her that it was not their fault, and they even made an attempt to save her from this fate, but they were unsuccessful. They also told her that they had abducted my mother. Another time, after that first incident, Mom says she has no recollection of any potential abductions, but she does have recurring nightmares of being abducted, but she's almost sure that they're just that, nightmares. Anyway, Lisa tells Mom that every time she speaks with them, she comes to understand the truth more and more. When Mom inquires what the truth is, Lisa just says that you will know eventually. And she says that once she learned of the truth, then everything became wonderful. Mom has seen her a few more times over the years. We still live in another state from her, and she apparently has a pretty normal life and doesn't obsess over alien stuff like some supposed alien abductees do. She only ever brings it up in passing, not like it's a central part of her daily life. I can't say for sure what happened to me that night, but here is what I know. I was driving home for the weekend from school at Indiana University. It takes me about 2 hours to get home, and I left Bloomington around 10 p.m. At exactly 10:53, I'm on a rural stretch of 2-lane highway I take home, and I noticed what appeared to be flashing lights behind me. I thought, great, I'm getting pulled over. So I turn onto the next country road, about a quarter of a mile from where I noticed the lights. As the car came to a stop, I started to open my glove box to get out my registration and proof of insurance. The lights suddenly disappeared and no car drove past. Now here is where the story takes a turn for the weird. And I'm sure you guys will think I'm just making it all up because it really does seem like something straight out of a typical UFO movie or story. The electronics in my car started to go haywire. The radio was randomly changing stations while the volume kept going up and down, while the dome light and headlights start to flicker and turn off and back on. This was at 10:56 p.m. I start thinking to myself that my battery must be failing, or else I have a short somewhere in the electric system of my car. So I lean down to pop the hood so I can take a look at the battery, and that is the last thing I remember doing. The next thing I know, I open my eyes and see nothing but the night sky full of bright stars. It was a cold night, and it seemed like I had never seen stars that bright in my life. I sat up and looked around and saw absolutely nothing at all. I was in the middle of a field, surrounded by corn stalks left over from the recent harvest. As I started to come to my senses, I started to freak out. Where am I? Why the f am I asleep in the middle of a field? Where the f is my car? I got up and started walking toward the distant headlights I could see from a road about half a mile away. When I got to the nearest intersection, I looked at the signs which read 350N and 50W. I was half a mile away from my car, which was just right off the main road. I started walking toward the headlights I could see on the main road. I can't say how long it took me to walk the half a mile, but it couldn't have been more than 10 or 15 minutes. When I arrived at my car, all the lights were out. My battery had died, which struck me as odd because I couldn't have been gone for that long. I looked at my phone, which was sitting on the passenger seat, and the time was 2:17 a.m. Over 3 hours had passed since I turned off onto the side road for the flashing lights before me. I remember sitting in my car completely dumbfounded, wondering what the hell had just happened to me. After about half an hour of just sitting there, I remembered that my battery was dead. So I got on the phone and called AAA to come out and give me a jump. It took about an hour for them to get out to me since I was a good distance away from the nearest town, during which time I just sat in silence, running through the possible scenarios in my head concerning what had just happened. To this day, I couldn't tell you what really happened to me that night. All I know is I can't think of any plausible explanation as to why I woke up over half a mile from my car in the middle of a cornfield more than 3 hours after I had stopped. I've only shared this story with one other person, my uncle. I'm sure people would either look at me like I'm crazy, or they would call bullshit on the whole story. And I can't blame them. If somebody came to me with a story like that so closely mirrors the stereotypical encounter story, I probably wouldn't believe them either. Alright, so the shoutouts continue. George Gaming Official, thank you for your continued support as always. To Katie Talk, I do yawn sometimes, I'm sorry. I try not to. I work nights and I work early mornings. I still try to do this every day for you guys. I'm not playing a victim. I'm just grateful for it all. So thanks for listening. Also, UFOs. This is one of our more popular topics. I mean, our page is called Reddit Aliens. So, do you guys think there's some combination between sleep paralysis, dream, hallucination, government, secret programs, or real extraterrestrials? Curious to hear what you guys have to think. That was long. I'm sorry. Have a great day. I occasionally suffer from sleep paralysis. It developed in my early 20s, and I've had the alien abduction dream. My dad and I love to watch shows about aliens, so I assume people who claim they were abducted had some form of sleep paralysis. It started with flashes of blue light, and I felt myself being lifted out of my bed by my chest. I was blinded by a white light, and I could hear a loud mechanical whirring. When I woke up, I was sitting up in bed with my chest stuck out. My arms are holding me up. The experience was the most intense sleep paralysis dream I've ever had. I can see how someone else could have that dream, panic, and tell everyone about it. I was on a wildfire just south of Dugway Proving Grounds in Utah. We were in fire rigs driving to the incident area, 4 trucks in close convoy, when we heard helicopters. 8 black military choppers escorted us in formation for like 10 miles. We assumed they were just doing drills and using us for a fake target practice or something. A little while later, we're parked and about to start hiking to the fire line when suddenly a thin column of smoke shoots, probably about 200 feet into the sky. It was a good mile away, but the concussion was pretty significant when it hit us, and the noise was still ridiculously loud. We thought it was probably no big deal. We knew we were near a strike zone. A good 5 minutes later, an aircraft like nothing I've ever seen flew by us at maybe 500 feet. It was flat black and sort of rectangular, but with fins and wells on the underside. It was moving pretty slow and was dead silent, so I have to assume it was some sort of stealth glider. It sounds ridiculous, but it immediately reminded me of a huge flying Batmobile, Tim Burton era. After that, some military personnel got on our radio frequency and instructed us to leave the area immediately. When our crew chief asked who it was and why they signed off, and the incident commander, the guy in charge of managing the entire situation, came on the radios and said we were evacuating the area. They sent us to a completely different fire about 100 miles to the south and never told us why, except that it was higher priority, which was bullshit. It was already out when we got there, and we just assisted crews in the mop-up operation. The thing that confuses me about this is that if the army didn't want us to see that shit, or if it was dangerous, why didn't they keep us clear of the area in the first place? Either a communications breakdown, or they had a now shit situation going down and had to get us out of there without warning. I was traveling back home with my mom from my aunt's house on a warm, sunny afternoon. While I was sitting in the passenger seat, an object just appeared in the sky a little to our left. We both saw it immediately. The size of it was shocking more than anything. It had the classic saucer shape and was shining brightly because the sun was reflecting off of it. We continued driving down the road for a few seconds just admiring this craft, when all of a sudden, we saw something I still don't believe to this day. It just vanishes, disintegrates, disappears, whatever you want to call it. I looked back at my mom and I could tell by her expression that she had seen the same thing. Since this sighting, I've always been interested in UFOs and the possibility of other life in our universe. This object in the sky was definitely not a helicopter, airplane, or a flock of geese. My mom and I still talk about the sighting we had and can't come up with a reasonable explanation as to why we saw that day. This is my UFO story, and it's not a hoax or fabrication. Everyone always laughs at me when I tell the story, but that's fine. I know what I saw. Not a very spectacular story, but true. I've always felt some encounter stories were real, but what made me truly believe was one night standing outside watching the stars. It was late, maybe 2 a.m., and out in the country, so it was dark. No streetlights, very little to no moon. I was watching what I thought was a satellite moving across the sky from right to left. Didn't think twice about it, as I saw them all the time. Suddenly, the satellite stopped and shot off fast, totally disappeared at a 45-degree angle from the direction it came. I have never, ever seen a satellite change direction, ever. It startled me so much I stood there for a bit, wondering if it was really saw it or not, but I did, 100% certain. It's unfortunate no one was there with me that night. Edray, West Virginia. One night a few years back, my friend who was driving and I were taking his girlfriend home when we decided to take the long way home. As we were driving along this fairly deserted back road, I began to zone out and I stared at this blinking red light off in the distance and casually think to myself, I wonder when they built a cell phone tower all the way out here. When it blinks and is dramatically closer than it was just a moment earlier. At this point, my friend points it out and stops in the road. It blinks once more and is directly in front and over top of us. The red light is so bright it floods the car in a deep scarlet hue. I lean forward so that I can see directly into the light. In that brief moment, I feel a flood of negative emotion. From the closest description I can offer is that of being naked under a giant microscope and having every pore examined thoroughly. I then look away from the light to my friend and ask him to drive. He barely responds, apparently in a similar state. Then he snaps out of it and starts driving. As we get a little ways down the road, I notice the red light isn't fading and the interior of the car is still clearly lit by it. I look out the window, and to my horror, the light is following us and does this for approximately 1 to 2 miles. The light unexpectedly veers off to the left and comes down to ground level in a patch of trees adjacent to the road. My friend stops the car again and continues to stare at it and abruptly declares he's going to get out and look at it like he is in some sort of trance. He opened the door and I grab his arm and tell him if he does, I will get in the driver's seat and leave him, that we had to leave that instant. He looks at me and seems to come to and punches the gas so hard the tires lose traction and spin. The light remained stationary as we rode away, but I've never looked at the night sky the same. Edit. The incident occurred after dropping off my buddy's girlfriend, so she wasn't present. In my rush to type the story, I forgot that part. Back in spring 1997, a group of us neighborhood kids were looking up at the night sky observing the Hale-Bopp comet. I grew up hours from any major city, so the view was pretty clear. After a while, we started to notice a red and white dot circling around each other, making sudden movements in every direction, like no aircraft I've ever seen or have ever seen since. At a certain point, they managed and merged into one craft, then shot out 3 smaller crafts. Although we couldn't tell whether it was a craft because they just appeared to be balls of light. This went on for a couple of hours. Right before the lights disappeared, they accelerated at lightning-fast speed into the darkness. We all went home terrified of what we saw. The next day, on the front page of our small hometown paper, it said it received several calls. The explanation they gave was that the local airport was testing aircraft. I'm sure how much I believe that story because of what I saw. To this day, whether I see my friends that were there that night, we'll still sometimes talk about it. None of us can be sure what we saw, but to this day, none of us have ever seen anything like it. 1997, Colorado Springs, Colorado. I was 8 years old, playing in the sand volleyball court at the park down the street from my house. I was engrossed in my activity, burying my collection of Happy Meal toys in the sand, and then digging them back out, repeat. I was looking down, but decided to suddenly that I needed to look up because the world around me had lost all sound. There was no longer any ambient noise. No traffic noise from the busy streets just block over. No more dogs barking. No more birds chirping. I looked at the street that bordered the park, and that is when I saw it. It looked like a stealth bomber turned sideways. Nose leading, one wing down toward the road and the other pointed up at the sky, completely shiny black in color, as tall as a house, shaped like an arrowhead. It was cruising the streets at 3 miles per hour, just gliding over the road. I watched it for maybe 20 seconds. As soon as it had passed behind some 2-story houses out of my sight, I got my hearing back full force. I ran home with my piss-soaked pants and never spoke a word of it to anybody. I was driving back home to Los Angeles with a friend of mine after visiting family near Phoenix, Arizona. We were headed west on Highway 58 just out of Boren, California, en route to Mojave to catch the 14. I was night, and we were jamming out to some music. The next thing I know, I'm waking up, looking around, and realizing that I was pulled over on the side of the road and that approximately 3 hours had passed. My buddy was fast asleep, so I woke him up and we both kind of had a psychological meltdown. After we calmed down a little, we went home and never really spoke of it since. I have absolutely no idea when or how we transitioned from listening to loud music and driving down the road to waking up safe on the side of the road.